Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. So, it is that time of year when one of my favorite reading events on BookTube happens. I might be biased because I am one of the hosts for it, but it is time to announce this year's Springathon. So, the Springathon is a readathon that runs 2 weeks in May. And originally we started doing it the first year of the pandemic, and the purpose of it is just to encourage other people to read nature writing with us. And it is nature writing something that I'm really passionate about, as many of you already know. And so it's been really fun to host a Springathon and to celebrate all nature things with you all. So this year I am co-hosting with Doris from All the Books and Heidi from My Reading Life. They are the hosts of the Book Naturalist book club. Very fittingly, they are a book club that read nature nonfiction, or maybe even some fiction, but nature writing. I'm really thankful to be co-hosting with them. Let's get into some details about the Springathon. So first of all, the dates. The Springathon this year is running from May 9th to May 22nd. So it's a 2-week period, and that is something that we've been doing in the previous years as well. You can, of course, spend the entire month reading nature nonfiction. That's entirely up to you, or nature writing, I should say. That is entirely up to you. I will probably be doing some month reading as well, but I'm planning to sort of concentrate some of my reading in those 2 weeks. So you do you, but that is the duration of the official duration of the readathon. The only challenge really that is like the core of the readathon is to read one nature nonfiction. Even though we say nature writing, it doesn't have to be nonfiction. There's tons of beautiful fiction nature writing, or poetry as well, that you could easily read for the Springathon. You don't have to entirely read nonfiction, but we do encourage you to at least read one during the Springathon, and that is just because we are all big fans, and it is an area of nonfiction that I think a lot of people could find enjoyment in. If you find your own niche within nature, because nature is such a broad theme. So that is the general challenge of the Springathon, is to read one nature nonfiction. And when I say read one, you don't necessarily need to finish it. If you are actively reading one nature nonfiction during the Springathon, then you have already succeeded with this challenge. One of the things that we did for the first time last year for the Springathon is to have a group read, and we coincided that with the Book Naturalist's May pick. And so the group read for the Springathon and the Book Naturalist May pick is Small Bodies of Water by Nina Mingya Powell, and this is a beautiful essay collection on so many different topics, but one of them obviously being about water and swimming. And that is one of the areas that I am particularly drawn to, as again many of you know already, and I read this one last year and really enjoyed it. I will get to the prompts later, but I can already tell you that this book pretty much fulfills all of the prompts as well. The only last thing I wanted to mention is that if you are doing Springathon related content on YouTube, on Instagram, or anywhere else, we would love you to use the hashtag Springathon22 so that we can find your things and share the nature enthusiasm as well. So let's get into this year's Springathon prompts. So the prompts are entirely your choice if you use them for your TBR building or not. It's just a way to inspire thought and maybe inspire you as you are picking up books that you could potentially read, but you don't have to use them if you don't want to. And also, like with a Nonfiction November, these prompts are meant to be used as you choose. So you could use one book to fulfill all prompts. You could bend the interpretation as you want and as you will. There is no wrong interpretation of these prompts. But I will be going through the prompts and sharing some recommendations both of ways you could interpret them, but also particular titles I think would be suitable and that I have enjoyed. So hopefully that will be helpful if you are stuck and you can't think of anything. But yeah, let's get into the prompts. So the first prompt we have this year is diversity. Diversity can of course mean many different things, but when it comes to the topic related to nature, one of the first things that I think about is diversity in writers of nature writing, which is something that I think many have observed is historically lacking. One of the books that fits perfectly with this theme is Small Bodies of Water by Nina Minge-Pauwels, as I mentioned. The group read fits with several of the prompts. So both in the sense that Nina Minge-Pauwels talks about being mixed race in this, and how also that perspective comes into play when she is making nature observations and observations on swimming as well. But one of the things also that I wanted to mention in terms of diversity is not just the types of writers, but the types of nature being discussed. Because a lot of nature nonfiction that is popular is centered around either US or European, Northern European nature. And so it's a very particular type of climate. And this book, she also talks about New Zealand local nature. And I think it is valuable to have different types of nature also being discussed and to see those different aspects of the world. Another author that I read last year and that I really, really loved is Jessica J. Lee. Turning is my favorite of hers, but also she has Two Trees Make a Forest. Both of them have a similar aspect to diversity in the sense that she is coming from a mixed race perspective. Two Trees Make a Forest talks about Taiwanese nature. Both of them are fantastic books, but I particularly connected with this one. And another book that I haven't actually finished reading, I have read like a fifth of this and really enjoyed what I read, but this is a very popular one, so most of you have probably already heard of it, if not read it, and that is Braiding Sweetgrass. Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which again would be a perfect book for this prompt. The next prompt we have is connectivity. So, connectivity, of course, can mean, again, many things, but the thing that comes to mind for me is ecosystems. The way that ecosystems are connected to each other, the different species, different organisms are connected. And the topic that makes me think of connectivity is fungi. So we have Entangled Life by Marilyn Sheldrake, How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds, and Shape Our Futures. It is a very, very popular book, and it was one of my favorite books of 2020. There's just so many amazing things about fungi, and the more you read about them, the more mesmerized you become. At least that has been the case for me. And I think this is a very good book in giving an overview of all of the different aspects to fungi. There's definitely other books on fungi and mushrooms that are of interest, such as Through the Woods by Longley Boone, which also fits with other prompts. Another topic that I think about in terms of connectivity is climate change and the way that how it shows itself. So one of the areas that I think of is marine life and our waters. What we have been doing on land showing itself in marine life and in the waters. So everything being connected, that is. So one of the books that definitely talk about climate change effect in waters is Spineless. The Science of Jellyfish and the Art of Growing a Backbone by Julie Burwald. I remember particularly she talking about coral reefs in this, and the effect that the lowered water quality had on the coral reefs and the damage that was being seen in that, which was kind of terrifying. A book that I have only just restarted, I started reading it last year for the Springathon, I think, is Fathoms, The World in the Whale by Rebecca Giggs, and it starts off the prologue or the first chapter starts off talking about how much we have damaged the whale population by the various plastic and other contamination that we've done that have gone into the waters and the oceans and seas. And it is incredibly depressing as a start of this book, but it really shows how an action in one place has an effect in other places. How they're all part of the same whole. The next prompt we have is sustainability. So like with the previous prompts, there's some overlap with these definitely, so you could very easily use one book for several prompts because they definitely go hand in hand. Of course, you could read about climate change and about conservation, both in terms of climates and ecosystems, but of specific species as well. One of the books that I think of in terms of nature conservation of a particular species is American Wolf, a true story of survival and obsession in the West by Nate Blakeslee, and this is entirely about the Yellowstone wolves. I think this is a very known example of conservation and the work around it, all of the legal aspects to it, all of the people involved in creating a difference, and it's sort of being a precedent for a lot of conservation efforts. You could also read about the environmental movement and people being involved in that. And one of the books that would be perfect for that topic is Beloved Beasts, Fighting for Life in an Age of Extinction by Michelle Nujhuis. And this is basically a history of the environmental movement. It's talking about particular people who have been very influential and have made a huge difference in both sort of the praxis as well as their projects and the legacy that they've left behind as well. So it's a fantastic resource in learning about particular people and also some of the work that has already been done. For me, this feels like a very hopeful book in talking about climate change. And then we have the last prompt, which is activity. So activity could mean, again, many different things. One of the things could be activity that you do in nature, such as swimming. I have done an entire video talking about swimming related books. I will link that in the description below. You could read about an activity that you want to do, so you could read about it and then do it. One of the things that I always think about is foraging. One of the books that I have loved that talks about foraging is Truffle Hound. On the Trail of the World's Most Seductive Scent with Dreamers, Schemers, and Some Extraordinary Dogs by Rowan Jacobson. This is talking about truffle hunting, obviously, but this is a fantastic book that is very, very passionate, and I think there's so much joy in this book, and foraging is definitely one of the topics that I really enjoy reading about as well. And obviously it is connected to fungi and mushrooms. And the other one that fits perfectly with this topic is Through the Woods by Long Lit Wound that I mentioned earlier, that I read last year and really enjoyed. Another activity that you could be doing in nature is just observing what is around you, particular species. One of the books that fits into that is Butterfly Isles by Patrick Barkham, where he is trying to see all of the British butterflies in one summer season. There's again a lot of joy and passion that goes into this book, and butterflies is one of my favorite animals to observe, and it is one of those things that also feels very fitting for this season with the May and early summer. So this is a really fun one. Of course, you could read about bird watching. That is another way to interpret activity. So those are all of the prompts, all of the information you need about the Springathon. I will link the books mentioned in the description below, as well as my fellow hosts for this year's Springathon. I hope you are excited to join us for some nature writing reading in May. I will be back later in the month with my Springathon TBR. I hope you are all doing well and you're taking care of yourselves, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.